Bardella is a NewsNation contributor, and Richard Goodstein is a former Clinton advisor. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here. Kurt, you have an op-ed today in the LA Times, and you ask if Biden will put duty to country first. You write, if we accept that the stakes of this election are spectacularly high, it is essential that the Democratic Party put forward the absolute best, most competitive ticket possible. After watching Thursday night's debate, you write, it is abundantly clear that a Biden-led slate is not that. Has anything changed since you wrote that?
No. I mean, again, this isn't about whether or not Joe Biden is a good man or has lived an exemplary career of public service or questioning his commitment to this country, to the betterment of this country and how he has embodied and represented American values. It is about the simple question that every Democrat voter and operative and staffer and person involved in politics should be asking themselves, which is Joe Biden the absolute best candidate to take on Donald Trump? Because I've heard since January 6th, everyone in the Democratic Party tell every voter this is the most important election of our lifetime. Yeah. Democracy is hanging on by a thread. Your right to choose to do whatever you want with your body is on the line. If that is the case, if the stakes are that high, and the circumstances are this grave, we have an obligation to run the most absolute best competitive ticket possible. What I saw last night, it's not that.
Richard, do you agree?
No, for a couple reasons. Look, we had two people on stage last night. One had trouble, no mistaking, to find the right words. The other
a lot
found
of trouble,
words,
Richard. Let's just call it what it was. It was dismal.
And the other one had a lot of trouble finding words that had any semblance of truth associated with them. And we're seeing actually in some focus groups since last night that oddly, I would say, but I'm glad, independents seem more turned off by Trump's lies than Biden's failures last night. Maybe because they already had his age baked in. Look, last night was an anomaly. We'd seen Biden at the State of the Union. We saw him just today in North Carolina. We saw him in a rally after the debate last night in the State of the Union when he was going off script and engaging with Republicans. He made them look silly. And this is the person, Chris Stirewall was saying, we don't know what happens behind closed doors. We do. How? He took Kevin McCarthy's lunch money when they had a debate about the budget. Kevin McCarthy lost his job for it because Republicans complained that Biden took such advantage of him. And to ask anybody in connection with the coalition that is standing up to Putin, who's Trump's lapdog, who's standing up to Putin to take on Ukraine, that's not something that just happens. It's because Biden commands the world stage in a way that Trump never could dream of doing.
But Richard, when you call last night an anomaly, listen, it's just not true. We've seen many. The Biden, campaign came out and said all these videos on Fox News are deceptively edited, and they were. But there's still a lot of videos. There's still a lot of evidence that he is a very old man. It wasn't just one night. It's been many instances, and we're talking. This is 2024. He'll be 86 at the end of this term. So the question isn't just, is he too old tonight? Is he too old right now in 2024? The question is always also, is he too old to lead the country for 4 more years? And Kurt's point is a good one. At the same time that Biden is saying this is the most important election in our lifetimes, to be this fragile on a stage is dangerous.
Look, if he was that bad, he wouldn't have done something legislatively that Trump talked about doing for weeks, getting infrastructure done. Trump talked about standing up to China. Biden actually passed a Chips and Science Act that actually moves the needle in terms of the U.S. standing up to China. Look, if the fact is that there were Democrats who were prepared to stand up to try to take Biden out, they would have done so by name by now. The people that Chris Stirewall talked about taking up Nixon was a crook. Trump's a crook. Maybe there is something that happens on the Republican side, but I think Democrats look at the polls. It's now a coin flip race. And the fact of the matter is, if you poll, as we have, Newsom, Whitmer, Kamala Harris, all of whom I think have a lot going for them, against Trump, and this poll was taken, Biden did better. So for him at this point, I think he's doing this because he's committed to taking on Trump. He has that kind of association with the middle class that he thinks most Democrats don't have. We'll see.
All right. Hey, Kurt, because I think there was such shock at Biden's debate performance last night, there have been far fewer headlines. There are many, however, about what Trump said in this debate. His refusal 3 times to say that he would honor the results of the election this fall. His statements that he would end the war in Ukraine before he even took office without ever explaining how. His shrug when asked if he would pull the United States out of NATO. His observation that there's a, quote, very big ocean between the United States and Europe, implying a war there won't affect us. Really, everybody's so focused on Biden, there's a lot there for Trump as well.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump over and over, every time he speaks, gives voters a reason to reject him. I mean, again, if as a Democrat, let me just say, if the choice is between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, that is ultimately a very easy choice to make. I'm not suggesting otherwise. I'm not suggesting at all that when it's just them two on the ballot that we should, as Democrats, should abandon Joe Biden. I'm simply putting out there the apparently shocking notion that maybe we can do better with democracy on the line than an 82-year-old white guy who can barely get through a debate and speak coherently. Maybe that's an insane thing to throw out there. But I watched what happened last night. And again, I'm not saying that's Joe Biden every day. I'm not saying that's Joe Biden every minute. I'm sure he does the job most of the time, a great time. But what we saw last night, 50 million plus saw. And no random comment and performance at a rally, 15 seconds of which we see clips of, and maybe some people are tuning in, most people aren't, is going to change the fact that this guy's old. And I think that if we're going to say that the only thing between us and democracy, us and a dictator, an authoritarian, is this 82-year-old guy, as a Democrat, that's just flat out embarrassing.
Kurt Bardella, Richard Goodstein, I'm sure we'll have you back. The story is not going to go away, and we really appreciate your analysis. Have a great weekend.
Sure. You too.